Guys, this is Succession. This is HBO. If you don't want to hear me talking about Logan Roy talking about then don't listen to this. There are bad language words in this show. Hello and welcome to the Living Plus episode of Slate Money Succession. Oh boy, this is a big one. I am Felix Salmon of Axios. I'm here with Emily Peck of Axios.
Hello.
I'm here with Elizabeth Spiers of New York Times and other places.
Hello.
We are here with Slate Money's favorite guest, Ed Lee. It managed to get up early to do this show. Ed, welcome back and remind us who you are.
Well, first of all, it's always very, very happy to be with you guys all the time, even at the very, very early hours. I am Ed Lee of the New York Times.
And yeah, we are going to live forever. How attractive does that feel to you, Ed?
No, I love it, especially if the Roys are helping me get there. That's all I really want. Live forever under the under the auspices of the Roy Empire.
If my life can be enhanced by character IP, I'm here for it. This episode is brought to you by Bank of America. If you own or operate a business, whether it's a local operation or a global corporation, partnering with Bank of America could be your smartest move. By teaming with Bank of America, you'll enjoy exclusive digital tools, award-winning insights, and business solutions so powerful you'll make every move matter. Position your business to capitalize on opportunity in a moment's notice. Visit bankofamerica.com/banking for business to learn more. What would you like the power to do? Bank of America N.A. Copyright 2023.
Hey everybody, it's Tim Heidecker. You know me, Tim and Eric, Bridesmaids, and Fantastic Four. I'd like to personally invite you to listen to Office Hours Live with me and my co-hosts, DJ Doug Pound.
Hello.
And Vic Berger.
Howdy.
Every week we bring you laughs, fun, games, and lots of other surprises. It's live. We take your Zoom calls.
Music.
We love having fun. Excuse me?
Songs.
Vic said something.
Music.
Songs.
Music.
I like having fun. I like to laugh. I like to meet people who can make me laugh. Please subscribe now.
So, okay, let's just get into this. This whole concept is glorious, and I love the way that they've tried to tie it into the takeover things. But the big picture concept here, which was apparently in the works even before, I don't know, that Logan and Matson started talking, is it seems to be a cross between Celebration, which is the Disney company-owned town in Florida, and some kind of insane Adam Newman idea of like real estate as tech platform.
It's basically mashing up, the traditional media sort of empire elements to, tech, right? Let's get that tech multiple, right?
Right.
It's like there's one of the many really funny things, but I think was it Greg saying, I think it's hard to make houses seem like tech. We've had them for a while, right? So it was so awesome because it was like, yes, like just on the face of it, that's the main problem, but like, sure, let's just say that, right? You can just make that happen.
You think of tech as a younger person's kind of game, and this is
exactly
housing for people who are dying or not dying, possibly living
they're being
forever,
kept alive, being transformed into turtles. It is a glorious idea of doing things like create housing for people who are living forever and or dying as a service. You can see we've just doubled the numbers in Colorado. It's amazing. Because numbers aren't numbers, They're just numbers. But yeah, so tell me, how much of this, Elizabeth, how much of this do you think is subtweeting Adam Newman and WeWork and whatever his new thing is, Flow, something like that?
Yeah. Oh, I think it's totally Newman, right? It's but I was thinking last week, when Matson was talking about sending his girlfriend his bricks of blood, that there was some missed opportunity to sort of turn Matson into more of like a tech dude who's obsessed with life extension and things like that. And so I was sort of gleeful this week whenever those themes kind of made it into the episode. So it feels like the writers were kind of looking around for techie things that they could, crowbar in there for satirical purposes. So Living Plus seems like a nice mashup of those things.
Definitely had like a Peter Thiel feel, right? With the blood transfusion things that he was into, which then ties to Matson's whole just half a liter of blood every once in a while until it stopped becoming a joke, and then it was a joke again, right?
So Ed, so Matson makes a bit of a misstep in this episode because he is not some kind of Swedish Ubermensch, and he makes an off-color Holocaust joke in the middle of the Investor Day, which he is then rapidly forced to delete. I know what I'm doing, he tells Shiv, even though he clearly doesn't. Who's the most reckless tweeter out there? I think we all know the answer to this one. Is this like an Elon thing?
This is an Elon thing for sure, right? I mean, This is. What's great about this episode is that everyone comes off like failing in some way, right? Everyone screws up, does something super, super crazy, with maybe the exception of Kendall, bizarrely, right? Because he kind of comes off at the end like, oh, actually, it wasn't too bad. The investors kind of like it, even though kind of worked, right? Like, even he didn't really know what he was doing half the time, but then, Matson is going off with this crazy tweet, this Nazi tweet, which he later deletes, which is not very Elon. Like, that's the one thing that, like, you're like, okay, so maybe he's...
No, actually, what it reminded me of, and this is a little bit of a deep cut, but do you remember when Mark Andreessen tweeted something about how colonialism had been actually quite good for India and got an enormous amount of blowback for that and lost a bunch of deals and eventually had to walk it all back and apologize. And that was the point at which he just started souring on Twitter, on social, on like the media, because he blamed the media for like taking his tweet out of context or whatever, even though like they were just retweeting it. And that one was like, it wasn't quite a Holocaust joke, although who did Holocaust joke during the pandemic was Alex Berenson on one of his anti-COVID tirades. Did a Machtfrei joke on Twitter, which went down as well as you thought it would.
So what was the first word? Can you break down the tweet for me?
Doderick is the main sort of cartoon dog character owned by Waystar. So Doderick is actually, if you remember, way back in season 1 when Greg is dressed up as a cartoon character, I think the cartoon character he's dressed up as is Doderick.
Right, yes. And he throws up inside the uniform of Doderick. Doderick sets you free. Okay, now I understand.
How far Greg has come. He is now like shouting at underlings and getting them to do his bidding and trying to be a tough executive.
He's actually turning into a full-blown Roy. He's being sarcastic to Roman and Ken, yelling at people.
Yeah, and he's getting editors to just do it. Just make it happen. Like, don't.
This whole episode is that. It's the Roys just yelling at people, firing people, management by fear and terror everywhere. It was horrible. They were horrible. They were the CEO bros are just an absolute mess. Didn't you think?
Yeah, Roman's
the CEO bros
insecurity about not being respected. It seems like he's sort of arbitrarily or on the fly firing people. And then he has to walk it back, and he's like, well, I didn't really fire...
but the point is, it's not clear that he's walking it back, right? And he talks to Kendall about this, and Kendall about, like, firing people, and he's like, And his first reaction is like, you fired Shiv's godmother. And then eventually he's like, you're just going around firing people. This is amazing. Like we are disrupting. And this is the great thing about Succession, right? Is that because it's not a morality play, because it's not like a black and white thing, because everybody is terrible. Joy is terrible. Jerry is terrible. Like, there are no sympathetic characters in this show. There is a part of this show which is like, well, the CE bros coming in, firing the dead wood, reinventing Waystar as a younger, more daring, high growth company. Like, conceptually, it could work, and like the stock market even almost kind of seems to be buying into it. And is it actually bad for Roman to have fired Joy and maybe even Jerry? Like, how much harm could that actually do?
Well, there's definitely going to be. You could see worst
Joy
case.
Was terrible, right?
But you could see worst case. There's a lawsuit, and Joy comes and says the story of like, I wanted to talk about democratic institutions and ATN and got fired for it, and that's like a bad news story for
and that's
like
a bad news story.
Weeks.
But that's Kendall's great line from earlier, right? When he's like, "We're a Roy. Our superpower is that we have no shame."
Yes.
But lying about the numbers the way they did and dubbing words, putting words into the dead Logan Roy's mouth for that video, like if that gets out, that's bad. No, that can't be good long term for the stock price.
That would be not only like it'd be SEC violations like times 10 for sure, right?
Yeah.
If that gets out. But even then, like there's that awesome moment for Carl. Finally, he gets his backbone where he basically tells Kendall, "It's like, I've got your dick in my hand, and like if you talk about, I will squeal." Right. So it's what happens when the king dies, right? Like everyone is just really out for themselves, including the kids, right? And no one's really, really in charge. When things are starting to break down. And yes, you're right, Emily. Like there are a number of SEC violations happening in this episode, right? Which like any one of them could just tank the business, period, right? And what I was struck by is the whole use of the dad is essentially a ghost throughout the entire episode.
Yeah, it's
right?
very Hamlet, right?
He's Hamlet, right? It's dad coming back saying, "Please avenge me," right? And they're all fucking it up, right? They're all fucking it up in some kind of weird way. And, it's I feel like that's very Jesse Armstrong. Like he has to stick in some highfalutin element here, which he does it in a really good way, in a really clever way. But I was really just thinking about, scene one Hamlet the entire time it's happening.
With like, Hugo and Carolina as Rosencrantz and Guildenstern.
Exactly right. Exactly right. So I know our listeners are probably like, yeah, whatever, just get back to the show already. This is what Jesse wants. He wants you to think about this stuff, right? And what happens at the end of Hamlet, right? Like if there's any foreshadowing here, it's like, it's not going to be good. It's not going to be good for the kids, period. Well, what about Shiv? What did you guys think about Shiv this episode? I mean, Shiv really owned the last episode, but like, she's sort of like the only one here who like is human in this episode, right? She's sort of kind of getting back with Tom.
Tom is human.
Tom finally becomes even more human again. Like that pairing.
Shiv does. Right? The Shiv Tom dynamic is super interesting in this episode and very complex. Shiv puts on like fucking body armor. I need Emily to weigh in on that suit jacket with like the black sort of stripes down the back and around the back and like not on the front, and then like, wait, Elizabeth is fashion insight here.
Yeah, we have to. So I there's an Instagram account called Succession Fashion that I'm now obsessed with, because the person who runs it goes and finds like the individual pieces of clothing that they're wearing. And you notice that there's some brand consistency for each character. So Shiv wears just a ton of Ralph Lauren. Like almost anything you see that's kind of a neutral or a navy, it's probably Ralph Lauren.
All her blazers.
Yeah.
This was a lot bolder than anything she's worn all season.
I was struck because the previous episodes of this season, Shiv's got her blazer and her turtlenecks on with the necklace over it, always very conservative. And in this episode, it's all like, it's a lot of cleavage, right? And like dipping neck. What do you call it? Neckline. I'm sorry, it's very early in the morning, listeners. But you could see a lot more of Shiv in this episode, and it felt like that was very deliberate. And at first I was thinking like she's getting back with Tom for nostalgic reasons, but then I realized, no, this is a total power play. There's a vacuum. Logan's gone. Tom had attached himself to Logan. Now Tom is this sort of like free range kind of atom floating around, and Shiv has now attached Tom to her, you know? So now they're allied kind of against the brothers.
Yeah, so no? Shiv's pinstripe suit is Max Mara, apparently.
Oh.
Yeah. But yeah, no, so she is more put together for the Waystar investigate than she was for her brother's wedding. Sorry, I was about to say funeral.
And I'm kind of curious. I mean, she has not had time to like have any procedures done, but is this woman still pregnant or what? It's only been like pregnant. A couple of days, but she's still pregnant. Okay. She's
still pregnant. She's spending her 20 minutes a day crying. It's on her calendar.
Right. She holds the glass of champagne, but we never see her drinking the glass of champagne. So
at some point, she has to tell Tom that she's pregnant. Like, this is the big, like, weird thing that is still between them that she hasn't told him and he doesn't know.
Right.
There's my favorite scene in this episode was the exchange between Shiv and Tom, where he says, he sort of admits, he says, you know, I've always really cared about money, and maybe that makes me shallow, but this is, you know, he's sure being honest about it. And you can tell that she starts to sort of criticize him for being shallow. And he says, well, if you love me, then you want to come live with me in the trailer park. And sort of points to her hypocrisy. And it was such a great little exchange. And you see them kind of understand each other in a different way.
Yeah, that was like the most honest moment, right? Between the two of them and just sort of throughout this episode. Which, again, like those two in this episode sort of seem like the only ones that are sort of having any real enlightenment, right? Any sort of like understanding about what, like they're in on the joke a little bit, right? Of what's happening around them, right?
Although it's interesting that if you looked at the reaction of Hugo versus the reaction of Siobhan to Kendall's speech, Siobhan is also ostensibly a communications professional, right? That's what she is when, you know, in season 1, and she's like working for senators and whatnot. Hugo understands that, like, as far as ATN watching Middle America is concerned, this kind of transparent schmaltz that in Dreams of Living Forever that Kendall is serving up is actually going to play really well. Shiv, with her suits of irony, cannot see it and thinks it's a complete disaster, and you know tells Matson on the phone that it's, you know, that he's what's the word she used? She has a great line. He's riding the bullshit unicycle. But she's wrong, right? I mean, he is riding the bullshit unicycle, but on some level, it's working, and Hugo recognizes it before anyone.
Well, so
but the Tom thing is so interesting, right? Is that basically Tom? Correct me if I have over extrapolated here, but I think I've got it. Tom is basically saying in that speech that the reason he betrayed Siobhan to Logan was because of the prenup. That they had like a whole prenup thing and everything was compartmentalized, and he didn't have her money and he didn't have any money really, and he was just like reliant on her, and he felt insecure, and what he's always wanted is money, and the way that he could get money, because he wasn't going to get it from his marriage, was by, you know, becoming chairman of ATN and making lots of money in corporate America. And the way he would do that is by getting in with Logan, and the way he would do that is by betraying, you know, the kids to him. I was like, oh, that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, it totally made sense. He chose what was good for him over her, because that's what he prioritizes.
With the clear implication that, like, if Siobhan hadn't sort of lawyered up and prenupped, then he wouldn't have betrayed her.
Yeah, if she had given him more money, if she had made him more
or made
secure
if they had become
in his finances.
more of a partnership. Exactly.
Yeah, more entwined, then he wouldn't have had to do this, right? Because he can go find a job with another company.
Right.
Say.
And that was the vibe from the beginning in the early seasons, right? Where the two of them felt like they were allied, right? Like her dad is crazy, the family is crazy, but like we have this thing and let's do this together kind of a thing. But then I think you're right, Felix. I think that's the deep read, right, on exactly what's happened here. Like the tragedy, right, of that relationship is she did it, right? He did it. Like they did it to each other. It's not like he just decided to betray her, become Nero, in that scenario, right?
Like he tried to marry her for money, but like she didn't let him. So,
right.
he had to go
she
cut
tried
it somewhere
to trailer
else.
park him, basically, with that prenup.
Yeah.
But when they're put to the test, it turns out that Tom can bite harder than Shiv can.
Which makes sense because he wasn't born into money, so he's more desperate.
And he's never even played bitey before.
I mean, what a rube.
What a rube, right? Exactly.
Who among us didn't grow up playing bitey with our siblings?
I'm disturbed by them playing bitey in a public setting. Like, if anyone happened to look upon them, wouldn't that be odd? Wouldn't this be this page 6
investor
story?
Day, basically, yeah.
Yeah.
The whole, right? It's like...
You imagine an analyst at a bank saying, "We have some concern. We saw 2 executives from Waystar biting each other."
Yeah, exactly.
Shiv has an amazing office, though, out in what I guess it looks like Burbank, overlooking the hills.
Well, that's the other thing too. I think there might be some like viewers might have some whiplash around the idea. Wait, where are they now? They're in L.A. Like they were in New York all this time, and then like London at one point.
The location thing is weird. This whole episode, as far as I can make out, takes place in L.A. with the single possible exception of Shiv refueling and Matson being there in his private jet, which make no sense. Where the hell was that meant to be?
In the middle of the country, I thought.
It's
somewhere?
like it's just like rich people, like literally, like engaging each other in random airports. It's like, oh, it's like seeing you in traffic, right? It's just like we're all just here.
That was a great power move, by the way, at the beginning of the show when she won't get out of the plane, so he comes out of his plane in his bare feet. That was like good on her.
Oh my god! And they're and Shiv like playing hard to get and being coy and like giving as good as she gets with Matson, and that whole sort of highly sophisticated, 0.01% flirting thing was awesome. I loved every minute of it.
Do they have a chance, these two?
I can imagine there's going to be more of that to come for sure. More.
It's very will they, won't they at this point, I think.
Yeah.
Well, will they or won't they, Emily?
They will.
They have to, right? Come on, right? We need to have this happen, right?
They have to, Ed says. And he's our favorite guest. Yes.
Yeah, viewers can't handle the sexual tension if they just build it up and leave it there.
Yeah, would they do that? No, they wouldn't do that. And I feel Tom would approve. He would be okay with it because it's a strategic move. So, he would go with it. Because they're not technically back together, Tom and Shiv, right? By the end of the show, Shiv is telling him, like, let's just do strategy. Let's just be together for strategy,
Can we talk about those lines, though, where Matson is like, we're buddies. Can we just talk? And Shiv replies, maybe I hate you. And it's just like he is being like the trying to puff himself up as the man and being like very aggressive. He's like, keep me looped, my girl on the inside, and she's like, fuck you, my boy on the outside.
It's very Roy speak, right? Like he's learning Roy speak. He just doesn't know how to do that yet or doesn't understand what that is. But he definitely comes across. I think what's accurate about the show in terms of what he represents is that tech bros are not savvy ultimately, right? Their savvy comes from the fact that they have more money than everybody else, right? But in terms of actual, dealing with things, negotiating, sort of reading the room, like they're just not good at that, right? And so largely because they don't have to be, right? If you think about Elon Musk, like Twitter is a room, he doesn't know how to read it. So every day he's just sort of like pissing over everything. And it's like, what are you talking about? Free speech, right? Come on. So I think Matson is still the jury's still out. Like, is he really smart or is he just a rich guy?
Well, there's a certain kind of tech bro with that level of money who is just a weirdo because the money has sort of turned them strange. So Matson, running down the tarmac barefoot or sending people bricks of his blood, like that all scans properly to me. The only thing that's sort of out of place is that they cast Alexander Skarsgård as Matson. He's insanely good looking, which I think Shiv acknowledges at some point. But the rest of it feels very tech bro to me.
Wait, I kind of think he's smart. Maybe I'm just charmed by Alexander Skarsgård, but I think he's smart.
He may or may not be smart, but I think he's better at Roy speak than we think. I have this friend who lives in Sweden and helpfully translated for me the Swedish jokes that they were making in front of Greg when they found out that Greg was a cousin.
Wow, you really did the homework, Felix. My God. Okay.
I did the homework.
What were they? Yeah, where were they?
And they said, have we ended up at an incestuous family reunion? And then they point to Greg, who's obviously very tall, and says, 2 meters of pure nepotism, an inbred Habsburg giant.
Wow, that is awesome. What a great line.
Even the Swedish lines are great lines. Exactly.
In fact, those are probably the best lines, and they're hidden from view for most of us. Wow.
Good job unearthing that.
No, then maybe he is smart. Right? Maybe he's sort of the unusual element here. He's tech bro, but kind of not, in a way. Like, in service of the story, in service of the drama.
I mean, he's smart enough to know Living Plus is going to be bad. Like, there's no way this thing is a success. The stock price will go up, but you know what? It's going to come down. I tell you. This is not going to be successful.
So the weird thing about the stock price, right, is that ultimately the stock price is just being valued by merger ups right now. Like the people who are buying the stock in the expectation that they will then be able, the merger will go through and they'll get a certain amount of cash and a certain amount of Gojo stock, and that's where it's trading and how it's trading. And so there might be a little bit of a boost after Kendall's speech. On the grounds that, hey, like this new combined company is going to have a lovely new revenue line in, basically sitting Granny in front of the TV, sitting Granny in front of the TV and showing her the entertainment from Infinite Jest or whatever the hell like this dystopian vision is. But it's still, just going to be one small segment of the Waystar half of the combined Waystar Gojo. And that's how it's still being valued. And so Kendall's cunning plan to make Waystar so valuable by announcing Living Plus that Matson won't be able to afford it anymore.
Yeah, that doesn't track.
That seems highly improbable.
Because, as you said, the merger arb's already priced in. Like, we know this deal is going to happen. This is where we think that's going to happen. This kind of play that Kendall's trying to do is the thing you do before any actual negotiations, right? Before any, you need to puff up the stock as much as possible so that they're forced to get even higher premium, right? But that part's already been settled. So that doesn't really track. The other thing, too, again, more SEC violations, just to be clear to the listeners, the fact that Matson is calling Shiv and saying, hey, can you stop this, right? You can't do that, right? You absolutely cannot do that, period. Like, you can't even back channel that kind of stuff. So on his end, that's a screw up, too. So there's all kinds of landmines in this episode in terms of everything that just any one of these things could end up tanking the deal, put it that way. So that's more potential foreshadowing. I don't know how closely the writers or show are really following the rules around how these things happen, but if they are, any one of these elements could tank the deal.
Reboot your credit card with Apple Card, the credit card created by Apple. Apple Card gives you unlimited daily cash back up to 3%. Now you can choose to automatically send that daily cash to a high-yield savings account where it'll grow on its own. And savings is built right into the Wallet app, so it's easy to monitor your progress. Apply for Apple Card now in the Wallet app on iPhone with no impact to your credit score, and start growing your daily cash with savings today. Apple Card subject to credit approval. Accepting an Apple Card after your application is approved will result in a hard inquiry, which may impact your credit score. Savings is available to Apple Card owners subject to eligibility requirements. Savings accounts are provided by Goldman Sachs Bank USA. Member FDIC. Terms apply.
This podcast is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Hey listeners, whether you love true crime or comedies, celebrity interviews, news, or even motivational speakers, you call the shots on what's in your podcast queue, right? And guess what? Now you can call the shots on your auto insurance too. Enter the Name Your Price tool from Progressive. The Name Your Price tool puts you in charge of your auto insurance by working just the way it sounds. You tell Progressive how much you want to pay for car insurance, then they'll show you a variety of coverages that fit within your budget, giving you options. Now that's something you'll want to press play on. It's easy to start a quote, and you'll be able to choose the best option for you, fast. It's just one of the many ways you can save with Progressive Insurance. Quote today at Progressive.com to try the Name Your Price tool for yourself and join the over 29 million drivers who trust Progressive. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law.
Hi, I'm Nyla Boodoo, host of Axios Today. It's a daily podcast that gives you the latest scoops and analysis to power your day. But we don't just run through the headlines. We provide the important stories you won't get anywhere else. Everything from politics to space to race and justice. So grab a cup of coffee or a cup of tea for me and join me for 10 minutes every morning to get up to speed for the day ahead. You can listen to Axios Today on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
I have two industry questions for you, Ed. The first one is Waystar Royco. Obviously, their headquarters are in downtown Manhattan, in a building played by the Chase Manhattan or 28 Liberty or whatever we're calling it. Their investor day is in LA. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that's not unusual, right? Because, in fact, I think they're lifting that directly from how Murdoch has done it with News Corp for many years, right? They've often held their investor day at their studio lots in LA because they want to wow, the investors. They want to wow the analysts. It's like, look, we're going to wine and dine you and maybe have some celebrities roaming around for you to ogle.
And it's good to do that in LA. Yeah.
Yes. So that's almost where yeah.
Question 2. When Jerry turns to Roman and says, you cannot win against the money is going to wash you away. Is that how it works? Is that just a standard truth of capitalism, or is she overstating things there?
No, I think that's very true because if you want to take a real life analog, the Murdoch kids, right? They each netted $2 billion out of that Disney deal, right? When they sold. So it's like, how do you walk away from billions of dollars? I don't know what the math is in for Waystar, but it's going to be something along those lines where basically all the kids get to just truly be independent. That was the point of ultimately that deal, right? That they could, at least from the kids' point of view, is that they could finally be free of their dad. Money solves all kind of a thing, which is what Tom has been basically telling Shiv in this episode. So that the boys, the CEO bros are thinking about, no, we could still run this and own it and do what dad wanted. Why? What's the point? Are they still trying to prove themselves to their dead dad? Again, Hamlet.
Yeah, of course they. Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Third question. Since I have you, just realized I had another one. If you listen carefully to the background while Kendall is warming up for his speech, there's a disembodied blonde woman on stage talking about how ATN is going to crush the ratings during the election. She says that in the last election, the total number of viewers for the election was 71.4 million, and that half of them were on ATN, and they're going to do like better this year. Which seems like ATN is a much bigger cultural force than even Fox.
Yeah,
right?
no one watches.
That's huge.
No show, no event has 35 million viewers. Not even, I mean, Super Bowl, yes, but not
right,
not conventions,
not
not
an
politics.
election.
Yeah.
And then we find out later, or at least I found out, maybe we knew this before, that Tom's official title is chairman of ATN. And so, like, let's assume that ATN is bigger than Fox, like, which is definitely the sort of impression that we're getting from those numbers. Let's assume that Tom is, as he explains, very motivated by money and making his own money and having the nice watches. How much does the chairman of ATN get paid? Like, how much does Tom actually have his own money at this point?
No, that's actually a very good question. I mean, in theory, right, like, he's supposed to be, like, inhabiting the Roger Ailes position, even though he's certainly not that, right? I mean, that's an 8-figure contract, right? So, he's in theory, he's getting $10 million a year in some form, in some fashion, with bonuses, including bonuses. So, yeah, that's, I think going back to what Elizabeth was saying earlier about, like, how you had the prenup, so I had to attach myself to your dad, get that position, align myself with him so that I could get that status, right? So in theory,
so Logan gave him like a $10 million a year job, basically, which puts into nice context that whole scene from a season or two ago where Greg was saying, like, my Uncle Ewan will give me $5 million, and Tom just sneers, like, $5 million is you're the poorest rich man, the tallest dwarf. What is that? And he's like, yeah, $5 million in wealth gets you nothing. $10 million in income, now you're actually beginning to feel rich.
Yeah, you can buy a few watches with that, and
yeah,
probably some stock there too.
Buy some stock, yeah, exactly.
I thought Jerry was saying something bigger, which was just like the tech industry is going to crush this company, going to crush ATN. Like, there's no stopping it.
Yeah, she was saying that too. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and that's what you see in the real world too. Like, a company like Fox is kind of just puttering along until its viewers die. No?
Well, Matson has that line in the previous episode where he says something like, I don't think this is a good business model. Just selling to old people who, he sort of points out the business flaw of Fox/ATN immediately, and then they come back to it in this episode because it's like, well, how would you further monetize an aging population like that? And so, the plan now is essentially assisted living with some possibility of life extension therapies.
Keep the consumer alive somehow.
Yes. Well, so you can keep monetizing them.
And
these are not the growth areas.
Right.
The growth area is not old people. No company is like, we serve old people and we're doing great. Like, that's not what you want.
Yeah, but Emily, how about I told you it was all going to last forever?
Oh, okay. Well, forget it.
Oh, can we just call out the Steve Jobs, the actual, like, Kendall Roy, rather than like the writers doing a deliberate Steve Jobs thing where he goes, one more thing. How about I told you? It was all going to last forever.
And that's the thing, is that, like, that's exactly the sort of the established, sort of creaky old media enterprise trying to be tech. And sort of the biggest, not the biggest, but one of the really great commentaries in this episode is the living plus. The plus is the tech part of it. Let's just put a plus on this, and it'll be like streaming, or it'll be like,
can you explain this? Why does everything, like, what was with the convention that every single streaming platform had to have a plus on it at some point? There was like Paramount Plus, CNN Plus.
Well, so
where
Apple
did that
TV
come
Plus.
from?
So Disney actually
Plus, yeah.
Disney created the Plus. They pioneered the Plus, right?
Disney created the Plus.
Right? And so
It
everyone
could have been
else
Disney asterisk. It
Right.
just, like,
this is really what it is. And like it's not a great I'm sorry, that's just not a great invention by any kind of marketing standard. It just doesn't whatever, right? And you're just thinking, okay, fine, whatever. But then everyone else decides, oh, that's actually smart. Let's put a plus on ours as well. So it's just lack of imagination for everyone else.
The I, right? Apple decides they're going to put the I prefix on everything. It's going to be an iPhone and an iMac, and then but then that becomes an Apple branding, and then Disney decides to invent the Plus. But apparently, the Plus is more fungible than the I because everyone else can copy the Plus,
Exactly,
but no one else copies the I.
Well, I think that was an error on Iger's part. It's like they didn't copyright the plus element of the Disney Plus, so that it could have prevented.
Wow, then HBO Max is a real innovator because they went with Max instead of Plus.
Well, now it's just Max. They dropped the HBO from HBO Max, and now it's just Max, which is
They're the originals. They really did it.
a guy's name, just calling it Max. Hi, Max. How you doing?
They finally got in on their own joke, I guess, so I'm going to give you a little thing about, a bit of reality on this. I actually was able to go to the Succession last season premiere here in New York and got to talk to Casey Bloys and whatever. And it was one of those really sort of, you kind of got the sense, HBO does these really fantastic, or traditionally has done these really fantastic parties for their shows. They're legendary within the industry. And the last season, it's going to be the last party for Succession from HBO, and it really felt like it, right? You can sort of sense, it was joyous, of course, it's still a party, but you could sense in the room, it's like, yep, this is it. After this, there's nothing else, right? And I actually asked Casey Bloys, I was like, wait a minute, so when Jesse told you this is the last season, did you accept it? Didn't you just tell him, no, you need to do more seasons? He's like, no, it was totally his call, and I respected it. But I did say to him, you have to be sure you can't come back and do this again, right? And I said, why did you say that? He's like, well, I just wanted to sort of nudge him to make sure this was really going to be it. And he's like, no, this is it, nothing else.
Dang.
Yeah.
Wait, who's Casey Bloys for people who don't know like me?
He is the head of HBO.
Right.
He is. I'm trying to think who he would be in the
new
Roy
Richard
Empire.
Plepler?
He is the new Richard Plepler, right? And by my estimation, a really smart, capable executive. He's not like a big personality like Plepler, but you don't necessarily need to be, certainly. He's very much an adult in that sense. Not to say that Richard wasn't, but
Talking about entertainment executives, the head of Waystar Studios, Joy, she seems extremely bad at the Hollywood schmoozing game for someone who has climbed her way up the greasy pole to the very, very top.
Yeah, the short glimpse we get, right, of who she is. I think
you really can't really blame Roman for wanting to fire her after she doesn't listen to him, doesn't answer his questions, just tries to berate him for ATN, and he's not having any of it.
Well, she has her own power, right? She's a studio head, so that's that's no small thing. I think he just, he's an open nerve ending. He just lashed out, right? I'm going to fire you. And had it been done in the Logan Roy way, it would not have been done like that. He would just sort of walked away, had the lawyers call
and then had the lawyers. Exactly. Logan didn't fire people to their face. He just got, Roman to give them the heads up that they were about to get fired.
Right. That's like Trump. Trump never fired anyone. He told, someone else to fire them or tweeted about it.
He just pretend fired people on NBC. That's
right.
Never in real life.
Never in real life.
Never in real life. Yeah, exactly.
What's that Roman? Oh, yeah, that's the Roman line. I didn't fire her, okay? I said that she was fired to her. That's all.
Well, that clears it up. But then he fired Jerry.
And then she was still there, sitting next to Carl and Frank. This is the second time he's fired Jerry, and she's totally ignored it.
I I didn't catch that. So she just kept going, just whatever.
She just kept on going. She was like, she was watching Kendall from the wings and like whispering to Frank, saying like, "Oh my God, this is terrible. Wake me up when it's over."
So explain to me how Carl, by the end, is okay with the lying and the dubbing and the SEC violations and is cheering Kendall on at the end of this episode.
Because he's spineless, because he's Carl.
My God. So we just briefly showed a little backbone only to cower away, scramble away back to...
Again, we don't really know. I mean, aside from the doubling revenue dub in,
Yeah, we don't know what numbers they finally.
Yeah, we don't know what they really released, right? Because they're talking all kinds of ways to like make it happen. And you see, I don't know the characters' names, but like you see that poor guy, like, yeah, we can sell that. We can make the argument, So like, can make the argument for everything.
Oh yeah. That's also a great line from Ken. What does that do to Kaga? Does it make it bigger, Pete? I've never heard. I've never heard CAGR like said as a word before. Have you heard that, Ed?
I've heard that.
Yeah, we say Kager.
You say it?
Yeah, we say Kager.
Kager?
Yeah. I mean, it's like EBITDA, right? Like that's a bizarre word,
right?
That, we just throw around, especially in the media business.
So yeah, Kager, for those of us who aren't deeply immersed in finance, is compound annual growth rate. So clearly, which by the way, when Matson says this doesn't scale as a business, this is what he's referring to, and this is why Kager is a terrible metric for building houses and retirement communities, is because if you have 10 houses and then you double it to have 20 houses, right? You've built 10 houses, and it's taken a certain amount of effort to build those 10 houses. And then let's say you double it again to make 40 houses. You've built 20 more houses, and that's twice as more effort to build 20 houses as it is to build 10 houses. It's not like you can just keep on doubling it. It's not like I doubled it in the last month, so I can double it in the next month, and I can double it in the next month, because it's not like software. It doesn't scale at zero marginal cost. The marginal cost is enormous. And so talking about growth of building houses with the frame of Kager is just, it's literally batshit.
But that's part of what makes it funny. That's because Ken's sort of bullshitty strategy is always something, insanely obvious. Like he says, when he's sort of coming up with the Living Plus pitch, he says, well, we just need unbelievable growth. And Greg is the voice of reason here. He says, yeah. Oh, so all we need is unbelievable growth?
No problem.
Why didn't you tell me? But Ken realizes it, right? Like he has that line where he's like, it's almost enough to make you lose your faith in capitalism, right? Where like all you need to do is is say the highest number, to use Logan's term, and then hey, the stock goes up. The reason I think there are two reasons people don't do that, and one reason people do. The first reason is that many stock market investors have half a brain cell, and they'll realize that just because you've said a high number doesn't mean you're going to reach it, and they're not just going to believe you when you come out with a crazy projection. The second reason is that it's a sugar high, right? You can say a high number and people will believe you for a minute, and then when you don't achieve those projections, then your stock tanks. And what's the point of making a stock go up if it's just going to turn around and go back down? In this case, the point is to prevent Matson from buying the company. So you can kind of see the tactic there.
True, but go ahead.
What we did see during like the dot-com bubble in like 1999, and even to a certain extent during the IPO boom of 2021, was a whole bunch of companies, the SPAC boom, a whole bunch of companies coming out with insane projections that no one really believed to justify this $10 a share price, and everyone kind of going, okay. And and the stock went up until it didn't, right? And so that's like something like Rivian, it was $300 a share because it had these incredible projections, and now it's like $10 a share because it didn't achieve them.
Well, Tesla is still riding that sort of that bubble idea, but the thing I want to point out is that so much about what Kendall and Roman are doing, it just feels so off in this episode. Like throughout the entire series, you're not entirely sure if they actually know what they're doing in terms of business. Like they've never really been given the chance one way or the other. Finally, they're given the chance. I'm just like, wow, these guys are terrible at business. Like they just really don't know how to do it. And you're like, it's either that or they're so screwed up by their dad's death that like, oh, they don't know where their head's at. But I think it's just they're really terrible at it. The idea of trying to inflate the stock by puffing up the numbers. I mean, when you talk to analysts, this is the way public companies work, is that they always undersell their pitch to analysts. That way, when analysts come out with their predictions are actually a little below what it actually could or should be based on what the company's thinking. They're gaming it so that Wall Street expects this number. They actually printed this higher number, and now the stock goes up, right? You always have to lower the expectations with analysts so that they're always going to undersell. They're always going to undersell their estimate. Analysts know that's happening, so they try to game it. But then the company knows analysts know that they're doing that, so that it becomes like this really weird sort of game theory thing. But just to go out there and say like doubling profits, like that's insane. No one, even if you think that could happen, you don't do that, right? You say everything but that.
Unless all you want is that brief sugar high boost to prevent Matson from buying the company.
Which again,
if you're not playing the long game, if you're just playing the short game, then you can kind of see the tactics.
But then they're going to be left with like a pile of due. Like, what are they doing? They're puffing up the value temporarily.
Yeah, an $80 billion pile of due.
So then Matson goes away, their stock price tanks. They're terrible CEOs. They're going to just drive the company into the ground in that scenario.
Well, I think that's what Kendall's was like. I want the price to be so high that he walks away from the deal, right?
Right. But once he does, they're going to be wrecked. Like it's not in the best interest of the shareholder for that to happen.
No, that's exactly
right. That's a really bad idea.
I mean, I'm just going to come out and say that like, all CEOs are fiduciaries. They have fiduciary responsibility to their external shareholders. And as fiduciaries, Roman and Kendall are pretty much the worst fiduciaries that have ever existed on the S&P 500.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Frances Fry.
And I'm Ann Morris.
And we are the hosts of a new TED podcast called Fixable.
We've helped leaders at some of the world's most competitive companies solve all kinds of problems.
On our show, we'll pull back the curtain and give you the type of honest, unfiltered advice we usually reserve for top executives.
Maybe you have a coworker with boundary issues, or you want to know how to inspire and motivate your team.
No problem is too big or too small. Give us a call and we'll help you solve the problems you're stuck on. Find Fixable wherever you listen to podcasts.
Hey Prime members, did you know you could be listening to this episode and all episodes of Slate Money ad-free? Avoid the ads and start listening today by downloading the Amazon Music app.
Let's have some favorite lines. Elizabeth, what's your favorite line?
I always love it when Kendall speaks in business psychobabble and really fast. So mine was at the beginning when he's talking about the longevity pitch. And he goes, "Give me the double click on longevity so I can see everything. Infinite brain box." So now I just have infinite brain box circulating in my head.
Infinite brain box. Totally. Brain box. Yes. Emily?
First I want to say there were not a ton of without Logan on this show, the barbs aren't where they were. Let's just admit it. Let's be open about it. Let's get it out there.
Well, I mean, Roman tells Jerry that she's, quote, using the F word freely. It feels disrespectful.
Right. That's good.
Only Dad gets to use that word with me.
which is up there with Kendall trying to persuade the board not to do the deal because Matson apparently uses drugs, says Kendall Roy.
Amazing. But I liked Shiv telling Tom, "I'm sure you're keen to get amongst it." And he says, "It?" And she says, "The vaginas of the cheerful women who aren't tall enough to be models."
Oh my God, I was trying to hear what she said and I couldn't make it out. That's such such a good line.
I missed that line too. That's actually really good.
That's a good
Amongst
line.
it.
Ed?
There are so many. I mean, I think it's these little moments, right? Like I think this is a Shiv line with Tom. You didn't have a taste of the dark meat before me.
Oh, right. They have a fight to see who was worse to each other.
Right. Which I think, precedes the you want to play bitey. Right? It's like, you could, like, this is sort of a new, because that relationship, their banter is like at a new level now, right? We hadn't seen quite that thing before.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway.
Yeah, Tom's like, I think I got my chisel in you.
Yeah.
It's like,
He did.
Wow.
He did get his chisel in her.
He did get his chisel in her.
Good on him.
I can't stop thinking, I really love Jerry's line where she says, you are a weak monarch and a dangerous interregnum. That was like, well done, Jerry. Like, we love that. Honestly, I think my favorite bit of my favorite line could possibly have been just Shiv saying, don't criticize my jet interior. You're like, yeah, I mean, like, I feel like don't criticize my jet interior is definitely like 0.001% foreplay right there.
He calls it dated. Doesn't he say it's dated in there?
He says that it's dated.
The decorations? Yeah.
But yeah, let's try and predict on the will it or won't it happen on the takeover. I mean, dramatically speaking, it has to not happen, right?
It has to.
We still haven't really seen the election happen, although we've got a little bit of talk between Shiv and Tom about, like, Tom is like, should I host the election night party that Logan was going to host? And so presumably the election night party is going to be a big episode right there.
The election is definitely going to be a huge turning point, plot point, something. They've been hinting at it all along. And I don't know. Is there going to be like a riot or something? Like a January 6th situation? What's going to happen? I don't know. Something political.
Do you think ATN is going to, like, call the race for Minkin's opponent, a bit like Fox did in 2020?
Possibly.
And Minkin's going to get on the phone with Shiv and be like, you need to fix this.
Yeah, exactly. Minkin's going to be on the phone to Tom saying, like, take that call back. And Tom's going to be on the phone to Sid saying, take that call back. And yeah, I doubt it. That would be a bit close to reality.
I think if the deal falls through, so does the whole company. Like, they're left with nothing somehow, right? No, that's too strong. They're not going to be left with nothing because they're not going to.
No,
rich.
I mean, like,
they're going to be rich forever.
This is yeah, exactly. Once you've reached this level of rich, you always have. You're always rich.
So what? What next?
What next? We will find out on episode 7 of Slate Money Succession. Well, we'll find out on episode 7 of Succession. And then episode 7 of Slate Money Succession will be back in a week on Monday. But first, we will be back with the regular Slate Money on Saturday. Thanks for emailing us, slatemoney@slate.com. Many thanks to Patrick Fort for producing and to Ed Lee for waking up early to do this. Thank you, Ed.
Anytime.
And yeah, we'll see you back next week.